Welcome to the Shield Your Business from Chaos podcast, where there's no building, no people, no third-party suppliers, and no systems all combined to create Chaos the Dragon, which is battled by King Phoenix and his shield.
Hi, welcome to the KISSBCP podcast. I'm Roswitha Firth, and our guest today is Michael Holton, a 30-year IT veteran. Before we get started, I just want to say a few words about Kingsbridge. Kingsbridge BCP has been serving industries and companies large and small since 1984, providing business continuity software as a service and consulting services. If you're joining us for the first time, you can find the KISSBCP podcast wherever you listen or watch podcasts, whether that's Apple, YouTube, through our Facebook page, or the Kingsbridge BCP website. So, Michael, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it. I know you've been in IT for 30 years, or over 30 years, and you've served the finance industry, engineering, and oil and gas. So I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Roswitha. It's nice to be here, and I'm happy to talk about IT because it's been my life for quite a while. And like I said, I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I've been in operations for most of it, but I did do a stint of management for about 8 years. So it's nice to see both sides of the coin. So
Yes, it is. And I'm grateful that our audience is going to get to hear your perspective from both sides, because today we are talking about the cloud. So a bit of brief background. Michael and I were lucky enough to work together, at least I think we were lucky enough to work together a number of years ago doing disaster recovery. Specifically, we shared a lot of time doing disaster recovery testing. And so that was pre-cloud. You really have seen all of this evolution. Tell me a little bit about like how that got started. What was your experience?
so yeah, so when I first started my career, everything was on premise. We managed servers, the power, the air conditioning, all that. It was quite an ordeal. I mean, a lot of money. Companies invested a lot of money in that. So VMware became a big thing, right? Reducing cost in infrastructure. So as I learned more about VMware and got more involved, I went to a couple of conferences, and I think it was 2010, VMworld 2010, where they coined the term vCloud, and that was the first time I actually heard the word cloud. So the vCloud was basically making your data center kind of a cloud. A cloud is really where all the bits and bytes happen for your organization, right? So it's all your infrastructure and how that infrastructure provides applications and other softwares to the customer being all the end user, the business. So yeah, it was kind of a neat thing. What is this cloud thing? So from there on, cloud became this huge term that all executives were like, oh, what is this cloud? We need to go to the cloud. So I think that it got a lot of hype. I didn't think it was really going to take off, but it really did. And then along the progression of cloud came outsourcing and such. But that's where I've seen the cloud go, and the cloud keeps getting stronger and stronger. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll go on into that in a minute.
So I don't think I remembered that the original cloud concept was actually on premises. So just briefly, what was the point as opposed to sort of how things were done? If you're already in a data center, what was the point of a cloud that was still on premises? Because that's
Well, the
obviously
cloud,
different than how we look at it today.
yeah. So the on-premise cloud, basically, you're kind of that's where VMware really came into that. Basically, they reduced infrastructure. They put infrastructure all in one place. So on-premise cloud is basically where cloud started with VMware, and it was basically having all your infrastructure in one place. Cloud makes you not have to worry about do I have servers here, servers there. With the VMware concept, it was one place all your servers in this one little box of infrastructure.
Okay.
It could be several servers, but it's all kind of contained in one kind of unit per se. You don't have to manage the updates on this and the power requirements here and the power requirements of this system and that one. It's all kind of centralized. So that's kind of your worry points are in one place.
That's a great way of that really helps understand it. So that's how it started. Okay, so fast forward.
Okay, so
the cloud
it evolved into, okay, well, maybe I don't want to worry about all this. Maybe I don't want to pay for all this electricity. Maybe I don't want to pay for all the support staff that has to manage all these servers. So Microsoft and Amazon, two big players said, hey, you know what? I think we can be the data center for everybody. We can take these worry points away from executives. So as Microsoft Azure and AWS, Amazon Web Services started to realize that they could do this. So with their thought of getting the they could handle multi industries, but not only that, they could take the worry out of security. As time progressed with IT from Novell NetWare and NT351 to where we are now, server 2019, 2022, the server platforms keep changing. So what does that mean for the corporations? It means they've got to continually invest money in operating systems and knowledge and training and all that. So with the cloud, it takes that element away from the corporation. Executives, all they have to do is pay a bill, and all that infrastructure management is done behind the scenes. But also, on that note, with paying that upfront cost, they think that they're going to reduce costs by not having this huge IT staff. But the thing is, the way that Microsoft and AWS approached it is here they bait you in. Here's what you get for this dollar amount. Oh, you like to do this too and this too? Oh, here you go. Let's add on. It's like, hors d'oeuvres here, hors d'oeuvres there. Then the main course is I guess when they really get
up. Yeah, it all adds up. So then I guess my question is, and the big question I'll save for the end, which is it worth it? But leading up to that point, so as a user, as a person in operations, what's a positive, what's a downside? Give me both as an operations person if you're actually trying to manage the stuff.
Okay, so managing it. Okay, so there's I think 4 different pieces or separations of cloud. So you have infrastructure as a service, you have platform as a service, you have software as a service, and IaaS. Okay, I can't remember the 4th one right now, but
That's okay.
Infrastructure as a service is basically you don't have anything on site. You just have internet lines to a data center, and you still manage everything, but you don't have to worry about having a room that has AC 24/7, has a generator, all that kind of stuff. Platform, all you manage is the OS, but they manage everything else. Software, basically Office 365. So from an operations standpoint, each one has its different caveats, I guess. I like not having to worry about power failures. So, platform as a service, when they manage all the hardware, you don't have to worry about upgrading buying new equipment. All you have to manage is the operating system and patching and all that kind of stuff. So it's less of a headache. It's less of a worry. You go home, you're not gonna get that call at 3 o'clock in the morning because the power went out at the building, right? So that from an operations standpoint is great. I have a life again. So negative side, it's going to reduce staff because we don't need people to do this and this and this and
Yeah,
this.
you don't need those hands-on
Yeah, we don't need
patties.
as much hands-on, right? You need the brain power, but not the physical power, so you can reduce. But that comes at a cost, right? So it's not a one for one. It's not a one for half of one. There is an algorithm, I guess, that industry standard has, but it's not the savings from a corporation's perspective as you think it is. It
Right.
sounds great. It sounds beautiful, but all the executives read the magazines and they're like, oh, this is the way to go. Well, absolutely. Well, after they nickel and dime you to death, it really isn't much of a savings. Maybe less worry, less headache, but not much of a
Not much of a
bottom
savings.
line saving.
You're reducing headcount, but
Yeah,
you're paying it to
you're paying it a
provider
different budget,
in a
maybe.
different way. Yeah, it comes out of a different budget bucket. That's a good point. So from a management perspective, how, like, you spent 8 years in management dealing with the same stuff.
I did.
So how would you look at it from
So
those
yeah,
both
from a
sides?
management perspective, it's a headache because of all the line items. You think, oh, this is going to be an easy contract to sign. Oh, just sign here. We'll provide you everything you need. No, it's not like that. It's especially when you're doing CapEx versus OpEx. It's like, oh, well, these costs need to go on my CapEx. So how much to get them to actually break it down is sometimes a nightmare. So
And you're talking capital expenditures and operational expenditures.
yes, and to get them to break down what fees are going towards what so that you can put it on your books and all that was a nightmare. And then trying to get exactly what you need. And then one downside of being a manager approaching the cloud concept is when application performance isn't ideal or you're having some kind of issues, who gets the blame? So on the cloud end, there's the internet provider and there's the data center. So for a while, Verizon did both. There was a point where they said, you know what, we don't want to do data centers anymore. So you had purchased a one package that they provided your internet and they provided the data center resources. But well, they decided they didn't want to do data centers anymore. So now it became IBM took over their data centers,
Right.
and Verizon kept the internet so that when you have a performance problem, who do you point the finger at? So then you're like, hey, I'm paying for this service. And then they fight back and forth. Oh, this is my problem. This is your problem. So performance issues don't get resolved in a timely manner. So
Which is a big problem if you're paying for uptime
right.
and you're not getting
Yes.
it.
Yes. You get the uptime. You just don't get the quality of
Or the
service
quality,
that
right?
you
The
thought
quality
you
of
were going to
service.
get.
Yeah.
And to get that resolved can sometimes take a good while, them with people, different facets pointing the finger at one another.
Sure. So taking all of the conversation that we've just had, we've been talking specifically about offsite data centers. So in a way, with the cloud, sort of DR is easier because you can pay your provider to make sure that you're always up, that you've got redundancy in a separate physical location, but that adds to your bottom line as well
Absolutely.
of what you're paying for. Um, so what are some gotchas perhaps that you would want to add about that piece of it? Because in theory, so if you don't have to worry about, the power outage at your facility, what happens when you've got an outage at your provider, and you're paying for, I've got redundancy.
So that's a good point. So the outage may not be at the data center, right? It could be now you're relying 100% on your internet lines, right? So you need to have redundant internet connections, which can be costly because you need pretty good speed if most of your things are sitting, 100, 200,000 miles away. Yeah, so that plays a big piece. So it's with reliability of having somebody else manage with, their data centers are far more redundant than you could ever, I guess, afford as a corporation yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, that can be a point of failure. So the data center itself goes down, which happens so rarely. Yeah, I don't know what honestly, I have never seen where a data center has actually gone down.
Okay.
They have so much redundancy built in.
So what about the big outages that we hear about? Amazon had this big outage. I can't remember when that was right now. But so if it's what's causing those outages that we
So
hear about in the news?
it's a lot of times it's a DNS denial of service. So somebody floods the network with so many requests that the servers just can't keep up. So they basically shut down. So it's hacking. It's all hacking that causes all of these data center data disruptions, yeah, if it weren't for hacking, well, if it weren't for hacking, the life would be so much simpler, but we probably less need support and less IT support because it's kind of the circle of life. This needs radar detector. Yeah.
So it sounds like you do have better coverage for disaster recovery if you are paying a provider to keep things in the cloud for you and manage all that. It's just a question of the cost of service and your ability to manage certain aspects of it and have more control, because you're basically paying a whole bunch of money to give up control for a
That's true.
guarantee. Do they live up to the guarantee?
So that's really kind of what you do pay more for. So it's not necessarily so much cheaper in the long run because you're paying for actually more reliability, right? So you got all this redundancy, it's all there. You don't have to worry about backups, you don't have to worry about tape libraries anymore. That's all somebody else's concern. But at your cost, that's why I say it sounds all great in the concept, but yes, you're going to get that business continuity. Absolutely. It probably is in the long run a lot closer to 99.9% uptime with a data center versus on-premise, because you never know when the building's going to have, well, you do know when the building's going to have maintenance, but if we don't have the power redundancy in any
Right.
office building that a data center has, nor do most buildings have generators to assure that the power is not going to go out. But that's where that cost raises. So you're not really losing, I mean, not gaining anything by letting all your IT staff go. And you really have no say in how things are done. It's basically, this is how it's going to be. And you're paying for us to manage this. So yeah, just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, executives. We got this.
Right. So that's where the decision making and the trade-off comes.
Right.
It might be more costly to do it yourself, but you have more control. You give up the control and you do pay a premium to get the service that you're asking for.
Yes,
And
you do.
the benefit is better redundancy, higher availability, lower
Right.
staff costs, but you're forking over a lot of money to somebody else. And so what would you say about that giving up the control? Have you seen, can you give a specific instance where like giving up that control actually caused a really big problem for the company involved?
Okay, so getting the pain point in moving towards cloud. So the biggest hurdle, I guess, and pain point was moving, depending on your corporation size. Some companies have petabytes of data. Getting that data into the cloud, moving your data into their network was sometimes a painful, lengthy process, and then you've got to like have some kind of synchronicity going between the two data centers. So while you're moving the data, you're still in operation. So then once the data gets moved, then you have to be synchronized, and the data, the little bits and bytes are moving back and forth. But yeah, while you're moving, the transition from on-premise to cloud, I felt like was very painful.
That's something that people might not think of as they're making this
Yeah,
decision.
they
And I
think,
know,
oh, we just turn this off, turn this on. Well, how do you get from A to B? That's a painful process.
thank you. And I know companies are across the spectrum still, you know, over a decade into the cloud. There's companies at all different points along that spectrum of still all on site, all in the cloud. And it's going to be that way for a while, I think, before we see kind of a permanent change. I mean, I don't mean a permanent change that cloud's going away. It's not, but there's still a lot of companies that are sort of, just starting that journey depending on their sizes and budget. Um, Michael, thank you so much for your time today. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. And this is a topic that we hadn't covered yet in our podcast. So I'm really grateful for your expertise.
Well, I hope I
And
provided some decent input.
absolutely, I definitely think that our audience has some things to think about and consider that perhaps they hadn't already in conversations with their management. So thanks again for your time. Thank you everybody for listening and watching today. Again, if this is your first time joining us, you can find the Kingsbridge KISS BCP podcast wherever you watch or listen to podcasts. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.